My name is Claire. I'm 36. And I think I've been pretending for a very long time. Pretending that things were fine. That I was fine. That this, whatever this was just what love looked like after 10 years. I used to think people who cheated were cowards, selfish and shallow. But now, sitting here on the edge of my bed, twisting the ring I no longer wear on my finger, I can feel that line blurring, not just between right and wrong, but between surviving and living. Because Liam walked into my room, and everything changed. But that part comes later. First, let me tell you about Ben. My husband. Or maybe just, the man I live with now. We met when I was 25. He was all jawlines and confidence, the kind of man who made decisions without hesitating. I found that intoxicating back then, someone who knew what he wanted and moved toward it like gravity pulled him. For a while, it felt like I was what he wanted. I was the girl who fit into his world like I'd been sculpted to match it. I remember the first year. His hand on the small of my back when we walked into rooms. The way he'd wrap both arms around me from behind while I cooked, whispering things that made me blush even after a long day. The way we couldn't get enough of each other, the hunger, the playfulness, the comfort. It was sexy and soft at the same time. But time is tricky, isn't it? It doesn't announce itself when it starts to shift things. It just sands down the edges. Quietly. First, it was the way his kisses started to miss my mouth, just slightly, like he wasn't really aiming anymore. Then it was how he started patting my back instead of rubbing it, like I was his sister, not his wife. The affection didn't vanish. It just went limp. Like a flower left in the sun too long. Still there. Still beautiful, maybe. But wilting. I started pulling away in ways I didn't even realize, saying I'm tired more often, flinching at his touch not because it hurt, but because it didn't feel like anything. And I hated that. I hated how numb I'd become. How small. I don't think he noticed. Or maybe he did, but chose not to ask. There was one night, I think about it a lot, when I leaned my head on his shoulder while we watched something forgettable on TV. He didn't put his arm around me. Just kept holding the remote, thumb pressing the same button again and again like he was trying to fast forward his own life. I pressed into him a little harder. He sighed. Not annoyed, not tender, just exhausted. That sigh stayed with me. Sex became something we did on a schedule, usually Saturday mornings, if the coffee wasn't too strong or the mood wasn't too awkward. He'd kiss my neck, and I'd smile and let him, but inside, I felt like I was acting in a movie I didn't audition for. Once, he whispered, "You're still so beautiful," as he touched me, and I wanted to believe him, but his voice felt rehearsed, like he'd read it somewhere. I remember staring at the ceiling, wondering if this was what it meant to be loved, to be seen, but not felt. To be wanted out of habit, not hunger. I started asking myself small, dangerous questions. Is this it? Is this what forever looks like? And then, there was that moment. It was a Thursday. Late March. I had taken the afternoon off, I don't even remember why anymore, and I was folding laundry in my bedroom, still in leggings and a hoodie that smelled faintly of lemon detergent. The house was quiet in that sleepy, late winter kind of way. And then I heard the front door open. Footsteps. Lighter than Ben's. Hesitant. And then Liam walked into my room. Unannounced. Unapologetic. Like he already belonged there. And in the split second before I could speak, before I could make sense of it, I realized something in me shifted. Not because of Liam himself. Not yet. But because I felt something. A jolt. A flutter. A rush of blood I hadn't felt in months. It was the exact moment I knew something had changed. And there was no going back. Ben is a high school science teacher. The kind of man who corrects news headlines under his breath and alphabetizes our spice rack twice a year. He's good. He's steady. He fixes things when they break, the leaky sink, the dead car battery, the Wi-Fi. But he's never figured out how to fix us. After Liam walked into my room that day, dropping off the drill he'd borrowed from Ben, lingering in the doorway longer than necessary, something inside me stayed restless. I didn't cheat. Not physically. But my body started whispering things my mouth wasn't brave enough to say. I felt awake again. Aware of my skin. Aware of the empty spaces where love used to live. The next week, Ben brought home a bottle of wine I used to love. Set the table with cloth napkins. Even lit a candle, one of the good ones I'd been saving. I watched him moving around the kitchen, humming under his breath. He thought he was doing something romantic. And I guess, in his mind, he was. But I couldn't stop thinking about how we hadn't had a real conversation in weeks. How we only touched in ways that assumed permission instead of asking for it. At dinner, he reached for my hand and ran his thumb over my knuckles like he used to. I smiled, I always do, but it didn't quite reach my eyes. He didn't seem to notice. Maybe we should go away for a weekend, he said, sipping his wine. Just us. No work, no chores, no routines. That sounds nice, I said, trying not to let the doubt leak into my voice. But it wasn't what I needed. What I needed was to be seen. For someone to say, Claire, you seem far away lately. Are you okay? I needed him to ask, not assume. To see the ache behind my silence. Later that night, he came up behind me while I was brushing my teeth. His hand slipped under my t-shirt. I froze, toothbrush still in my mouth. Not because I didn't want him, or maybe I didn't, but because the touch felt like a request I hadn't answered. Or worse, a task. He kissed my neck, the way he always used to when he wanted more. His lips were warm. Familiar. But I felt like I was disappearing again, folding myself into a version of a woman I didn't recognize. I pulled away gently. I'm tired, I said, barely above a whisper. He stepped back, jaw tight. You're always tired lately. I've been working more, I offered. He nodded. But his face shifted. There it was, that unspoken accusation. You're slipping away from me, and I don't know why. But he didn't ask. And I didn't explain. The next morning, he made coffee and left it on my side of the bed. I stared at it, the little heart he'd swirled into the foam. My chest tightened. Because that's what he does. He tries, in the only language he knows, touch, acts of service, warmth. He thinks pouring me coffee is the same as pouring himself into me. But I needed words. I needed to hear what he felt. What he feared. I needed to feel like a partner, not a project. That afternoon, I sat at the kitchen counter, scrolling mindlessly through emails. Liam texted me, "Hey, thanks again for letting me drop the drill off the other day. You looked distracted. Everything okay?" 6 words. Everything okay? And just like that, I felt seen. Not desired. Not pursued. Just noticed. It made me wonder how many women are walking around their kitchens holding mugs full of silence, aching for someone to ask how they're really doing. Ben came home that evening with a bag of groceries and a kiss on my forehead. He talked about a student who nearly set the chem lab on fire. I laughed in the right places. Then he reached for me again, later, in the hallway, in that quiet hour before bed. And this time I let him, not out of passion, but guilt. His hands were kind. His breath steady. But I felt like I was standing outside my body, watching a woman perform intimacy like she owed it to him. And in the dark, afterward, while he drifted off, I lay there awake, wondering how something that once felt so natural now made me feel like a stranger in my own skin. It's not that I don't want Ben. It's that I want him. And I don't know how to explain the difference without sounding cruel. Saturday morning. He makes pancakes, like he always does. He puts blueberries in mine because I used to say they reminded me of childhood. I don't know if I like them anymore, but I don't say that. I eat them, smile, laugh at the way he uses too much syrup. He slaps my butt when I walk past him to put my plate in the sink. I flinch. He doesn't notice. Or maybe he thinks I'm being playful. Maybe I used to be playful. I turn around and he's grinning, cheeks slightly red. He thinks it's flirtation. I wish it was. You smell good, he says, pulling me toward him by the waist. I'm in one of his old t-shirts, hair still wet from my shower. He kisses my neck, his stubble grazing my skin. It should feel nice. It doesn't. I smile because it's easier than explaining. He leans in again, this time brushing his lips across my collarbone. He's trying. I see him trying. But my body feels like it's performing instead of responding. His hands slip under my shirt, and my breath catches, not in that good, spine-tingling way. More like I'm holding something back. Panic? Sadness? I place my hand lightly over his wrist. Ben, he pauses. Looks up. What's wrong? I shake my head, stepping back. I'm not in the mood. I'm sorry. He exhales slowly, jaw shifting. You're never in the mood anymore. I hate that word, never. It's heavy and sharp and impossible to disprove. That's not fair, I say. Is it not? He asks, softer now. Not angry, just hurt. Claire, I don't know how to reach you. You barely touch me. You won't even kiss me like you mean it. I fold my arms, suddenly cold despite the sun streaming through the kitchen window. I'm tired, Ben. I'm disconnected. I don't know why. You won't even talk to me about it. I open my mouth, but nothing comes out. Because how do I say, every time you touch me, I feel more alone than when you don't? Instead, I offer something small and safe. It's not you. I'm just going through something. He nods slowly. His face is unreadable now, like a window with the curtains drawn. He steps back, gives me space, physically, at least. I go upstairs and sit on the edge of the bed. Later, he comes up behind me again. Wraps his arms around my shoulders gently, rests his chin on my head. I love you, Claire, he whispers. I'm not giving up on us. And I believe him. That's the worst part. He does love me. He's doing what he knows how to do. He thinks love means holding on tighter when something slips. But I'm suffocating. I lean into his chest out of habit. He kisses the top of my head. And all I can think is, why does everything have to turn into sex? It was supposed to be just dinner. Nothing dramatic. Nothing forced. Just a quiet Thursday evening with takeout from our favorite Indian place, and a bottle of red we'd been saving since Christmas. Ben lit the candles again. I think he thought it would soften me. Romance in low light. We ate in near silence at first, the sound of our fork scraping the plates louder than our conversation. He asked how work was. I said fine. He asked if I liked the SOG painter. I nodded. Smiled. Chewed. But the air between us felt tight, like it was holding its breath. Then, out of nowhere, he reached across the table and took my hand. I've been thinking, he said. Maybe we should start trying again. For the baby. I blinked. What? I mean, if we're gonna do it, we should probably stop waiting. We're not getting any younger. My stomach turned. He looked at me like he'd just offered me a vacation. Like he'd handed me a beautifully wrapped gift. But all I felt was panic. We barely touch each other, Ben, I said, too quickly. His face twisted. That's not true. I pulled my hand back. It's a little true. He set his fork down gently, like he was afraid of breaking something. So what? We wait until you're in the mood for another year? 2? Claire, we can't build a family on this. Pause. That word, pause, snapped something in me. You think this is a pause? My voice cracked. This is our life, Ben. This isn't just a phase I'm gonna snap out of with the right playlist and a weekend getaway. He opened his mouth to respond, but I was already standing. Do you know how many times I've faked it? I asked, louder now. Faked the smiles, the moans, the conversations? I've been holding this together with duct tape and politeness and guilt for months. He stood up too, his chair scraping against the hardwood. You're acting like I've been ignoring you, he said. But I've been here, Claire. I've been trying. You're the one pulling away. I don't feel anything when you touch me, I snapped. I feel nothing. Or worse, I feel like I'm performing. Like I owe you closeness just because you brought me dinner. His face fell like I'd slapped him. You think that's what I want? A performance? I didn't answer. I couldn't. My chest was heaving. My hands were shaking. And I hated myself even as I said the next thing. Liam asked if I was okay last week. That's all. Just asked. And it made me cry in the laundry room. Because you haven't looked at me like a person in months. You just touch me. Like that's supposed to mean something. Ben stared at me like I was someone else. Someone he didn't recognize. Liam, he said quietly. Our neighbor Liam? I nodded, tears burning my throat. I didn't do anything. I haven't cheated. But when he looked at me, I felt real. Like someone worth checking on. Silence. A long, thick silence that settled between us like dust. Ben looked down. His jaw clenched. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and flat. Maybe you should ask him to make you pancakes, then. And he walked out. Not stormed. Just walked. I stood there in the candlelight, the food growing cold behind me, feeling gutted. Raw. I didn't chase him. I didn't cry until I heard the bedroom door shut. And when I did, when it finally came pouring out, it wasn't the kind of crying that feels like release. It was the kind that makes you question everything. Who you are. What you've become. What you're about to ruin. Because I knew I had hurt him. I'd cut into his softness with all the things I'd been storing in silence. And part of me wanted to run to him, to say I didn't mean it like that. But another part of me, the part I'd been afraid to listen to, whispered something darker, maybe I did. And that part sat with me on the kitchen floor, holding all the guilt and confusion and shame I didn't know what to do with. It's been 12 days since that night. 12 mornings of drinking cold coffee in silence. 12 nights of hearing him shift in bed, just out of reach. We still sleep next to each other, but it feels like we're oceans apart. There's no touching now. No attempts at conversation. Just the quiet choreography of two people who used to know each other. Ben doesn't slam doors. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't disappear. He's still there, physically. But everything else is dimmed. He gets home, changes out of his work clothes, microwaves whatever I've left in the fridge. Sometimes he says thanks. Sometimes he doesn't. We don't sit at the table anymore. He eats in the living room with the TV on low, some old rerun, barely watching. And I just hover. In the doorway. In my own skin. I miss him. Not just the routines or the comfort. I miss Ben. The way he used to look at me when I walked into a room. The way he'd absent-mindedly touch my knee during dinner or squeeze my hand when we crossed the street. But more than anything, I miss the version of me who didn't feel like she was always trying not to break something. One night I come home late from work. My office hours ran over, or maybe I just stayed on purpose. When I walk in, he's folding laundry in the living room. One of my sweaters, the green one he used to steal, is draped over his forearm. He doesn't look up. "Hey," I say softly. "Hey," he replies. But it's automatic. Not warm. Not angry. Just neutral. I stand there for a beat, watching him pair socks like he's solving a math problem. There's something so deeply sad about it. Like even his silence is tired. "Ben," I start. "I never meant to hurt you." He pauses, mid-fold. Doesn't look at me. "I know," he says. Quiet. Flat. "But you did." And that's the hardest part, knowing he's right. I did. With my silence. With my distance. With Liam's name on my tongue like a splinter. He finishes the last shirt and stands up, not angry, just exhausted. "I'm going to bed." I nod. Watch him disappear down the hallway. I don't follow. That night, I sit at the kitchen table long after the lights are off. I scroll through my phone, not looking for anything, just avoiding the ache. There's a text from Liam I never answered. Just checking in. "You okay?" I stare at it, thumb hovering over the screen. I could reply. I could open that door. It would be easy. But instead, I set the phone down and close my eyes. Because the truth is, I don't want Liam. Not really. I just wanted to feel like someone saw me. And now, all I want is to see Ben. To reach across the great divide between us and say something honest, something that might matter. But I don't know how. I don't know if he's still waiting on the other side, or if I've waited too long. And so I sit there, alone in the kitchen we built together, holding the question I've been too scared to ask: do I try again, or let go? The morning I decide to talk to him, it's raining. One of those quiet, gray downpours that makes everything feel like a memory. Ben is in the kitchen, pouring cereal into a bowl. No music. No news playing. Just the sound of the rain and his spoon clinking against porcelain. I step into the room and for a second, he doesn't look up. Then he does. He's thinner. Or maybe just more distant. His eyes soften a little, like he's trying to read the weather in my face. "I was thinking," I begin, voice dry and hesitant, "maybe we could talk. Not about the baby. Or sex. Just about us." He leans back against the counter, arms folded. He nods, but slowly, like he's not sure if he has the strength or if it matters anymore. "Okay," he says, his voice low. "Talk." I open my mouth and everything inside me wants to spill out. The guilt. The numbness. The fact that I miss him but I don't know how to come back from the distance I created. "I don't think I knew how lonely I was until someone else saw it," I say. "And that's not your fault. But I couldn't tell you because I didn't know what I needed." He exhales through his nose. Doesn't interrupt. Just listens. I go on, softer now. "I still love you, Ben. I think I do. But I'm not the person I was when we met. And maybe I kept pretending I was because I didn't want to scare you. Or lose you." He nods again, still silent. And then, for the first time in what feels like forever, he walks over and pulls me into a hug. Not desperate. Not romantic. Just human. His chin rests on my shoulder. His hands press into my back. And I cry. Not loud, not messy. Just quiet tears that soak into his shirt. When he pulls back, he presses a kiss to my forehead, gentle, final. Then he says the words I didn't know I'd been expecting, "I think we broke something, Claire. And I don't know if we're the kind of people who can rebuild it." I nod. I don't fight him. Because deep down, I agree. That night, he sleeps on the couch. I watch him from the hallway, his arms slung over his eyes, chest rising slowly. I want to crawl next to him and take it all back. But I don't. Because it's not just pain keeping us apart. It's the truth. Some love doesn't survive the silence. And some goodbyes don't come with doors slamming or bags packed. Sometimes, the end is quiet. Sometimes, it rains. And sometimes, the real moment everything changes, is the moment nothing happens at all. My name is Claire. I'm 34. And I used to think love was about staying. Just staying. Through the hard days. Through the silences. Through the friction of two people rubbing up against life and expecting it to feel like it used to. But that's the thing they don't tell you, sometimes, love leaves the room without making a sound. And you stay, thinking it's still there because you haven't left either. I stayed. I stayed when the kisses stopped meaning something. I stayed when I started dreading bedtime. I stayed when my body became a script I couldn't remember how to perform. And I thought that made me strong. Loyal. Good. But strength isn't the same as silence. And loyalty doesn't mean disappearing inside yourself. The day Liam walked into my room, nothing happened. Not really. He was just dropping off a package that had been misdelivered. He knocked once, then let himself in. We'd told him to, years ago, back when we trusted the world more. He handed me the box, looked at me for 2 seconds too long, and asked, "Hey, are you okay?" That was it. But I hadn't heard those words in months. Not in that tone. Not with that softness. Not with that pause, the one that waits for a real answer. And I think that's when something shifted. Not because Liam was special. Not because I wanted him. But because, in that moment, I realized I'd been starving. For curiosity. For attention that wasn't laced with expectation. For someone to see the me behind the doing, the chores, the dinners, the dutiful kisses, the half-hearted cuddles. Ben loved me. I never doubted that. But sometimes love turns into rhythm. And rhythm, if left unchecked, can become routine. And routine, if you're not careful, can become a slow form of erasure. What I learned, and it took the collapse of everything to see it, is that desire doesn't live in obligation. It lives in being known. And I had stopped letting myself be known. Because to be known is to risk. To admit you're not who you were. To say, "I'm different now, and I don't know how to tell you what I need." That takes courage. And I'd been so busy protecting the idea of us that I never noticed I was disappearing underneath it. Ben and I didn't explode. We didn't cheat. We didn't scream. We just slowly forgot how to look at each other. And eventually, the forgetting became the truth. He's gone now. Moved out 2 weeks ago. We cried when he left. Both of us. We hugged too long and said too little. Because there wasn't one villain. No smoking gun. Just 2 tired people who couldn't figure out how to re-enter the same story. And you know what's strange? I still love him. But I love myself more now. I learned that love isn't about preserving something at all costs. It's about presence. It's about wanting to show up, not because you're supposed to, but because something inside you is still reaching. And if the reaching stops, from both sides, sometimes the kindest thing you can do is let go. So no. I didn't have an affair. But I was unfaithful to myself. I abandoned the parts of me that were quietly asking for attention. And I won't do that again. Not for comfort. Not for nostalgia. Not for a love that used to fit like skin, but started to feel like a costume. I don't know what happens next. I'm not sure I believe in forever the way I used to. But I believe in truth now. In softness. In being seen, really seen. And if I ever fall in love again, I hope the next person walks into the room and doesn't just touch me. I hope they stay long enough to notice me.